I want you to just picture a scenario for a second. It's late on a Tuesday night. You're sitting on your couch. You've got your laptop open, and you are hunting.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Right. You have like 20 different tabs open. You're comparing shipping rates. You're applying promo codes you found on some totally obscure Reddit thread, and you are just on the prowl for a bargain.
Yep, the classic late night hustle.
Exactly. We all know this exact feeling. You calculate the discount in your head. You realize you can get this item for 20% less if you just bundle it with something else. And when you finally click checkout, there is this massive, undeniable rush of dopamine.
Oh, yeah, you feel like an absolute genius.
You do. You feel like you beat the system, like you protected your hard-earned cash. But I want to introduce a completely different way of looking at that exact moment today.
Because it's actually not a victory at all, is it?
No, it's really not. What if the lengths you go to just to save a little cash, that relentless, almost obsessive hunt for the word cheap, is actually the exact economic mechanism that is keeping you broke?
Yeah, and that is a highly uncomfortable premise to start with, isn't it? Because, well, we are conditioned from childhood to believe that a penny saved is a penny earned.
Right, like clip your coupons and you'll be rich one day.
Exactly. Financial literacy is almost always taught through this lens of extreme frugality. But when we start, peeling back the layers of how wealth is actually architected at a systemic level, that old adage starts to look a lot less like a strategy for financial freedom and, well, more like a carefully designed cage.
A cage. I love that analogy. And that cage is the core focus of our deep dive today. So we're pulling from this really fascinating economic framework put together by the UFX School of Hustle.
Which is just a brilliant piece of analysis.
It really is. And for a bit of context, this framework specifically analyzes the mechanics of the township economy in South Africa. Now, for anyone unfamiliar, townships are these massive, high-density urban areas that were historically segregated. But today, they are absolute powerhouses of informal economic activity.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking billions circulating entirely outside the traditional banking sector.
Billions. But here's the thing. The UFX framework uses this specific environment to expose principles that apply to literally every single person participating in modern capitalism, no matter where you live.
Yeah, the geography is specific, but the psychology is universal.
So we're going to unpack the trap of the cheap mindset, the hidden mechanics of why the line at your local convenience store literally never ends, and the fundamental difference between sweating for a dollar and actually building a machine that prints them.
And the foundational thesis of this framework is quite stark, honestly. It doesn't leave much room for gray area.
No, it's pretty brutal.
It is. It basically posits that every economy, whether we are talking about a rural village, a bustling township, or, the global digital marketplace, it ultimately divides its participants into just two categories: those who consume and those who own.
It's a binary. You're either eating the pie or you own the bakery.
That's a great way to put it.
To really grasp that distinction, we need to look at the primary case study presented in the source material. It revolves around a very common hustle, which is the journey to Joburg.
Johannesburg, right.
Right. Johannesburg is the economic hub. It's the industrial center. So you have folks traveling from the townships into Joburg specifically to buy goods at a cheaper rate to bring them back and sell.
Which makes sense on paper.
Totally.
Yeah.
And there's this brilliant conceptual dialogue in the material between two figures, Kamo and Nailelo. Kamo poses the obvious question, right? He asks, why do people go to Joburg for cheap things?
Which is the logical, perfectly rational economic question to ask. I mean, capital flows to where the margins are best. If you want cheap goods, you travel to the geographic concentration of cheap goods.
But Nailo's response just totally dismantles that logic. Nailo points out that, yes, everything is cheaper in Joburg, but he asks the critical follow-up question. He says, why isn't it cheap here? Same people, same needs, same money.
I want to pause on that phrase, actually, because it completely strips away the traditional excuses that economists tend to make about poverty or underdevelopment.
Right, like they always blame something else.
Exactly. Usually we blame a lack of capital, a lack of consumer demand, or maybe a lack of population density. But Nailo is pointing out that, hey, none of those variables are missing here.
The demand is ferocious.
Ferocious. The population density is incredibly high, and the money, like the actual physical purchasing power, is actively circulating, so the variable missing isn't the desire to buy.
Right, so Kamal asks, so what's the difference?
Yeah.
And Anilo just drops the hammer. He says, Joburg doesn't just buy cheap. Joburg produces cheap. They own factories. Here we wait for trucks from factories we don't own. We're the market that forgot it can build.
Wow. A market that forgot it can build.
Yeah.
That is it's a diagnosis of a systemic psychological conditioning.
It's a heavy realization.
It really is. Over generations, entire communities can become conditioned to view their geographic location purely as a destination. You look at your neighborhood and you just see an endpoint for products to arrive, rather than an origin point where value is actually created.
It's like a collective amnesia about production.
Yes, exactly that.
So let's ground this in the mechanics of the actual hustle, because this is where the math gets pretty brutal. Let's look at the person on the ground. You wake up at, what, 4 below?
Pitch black outside.
Pitch black. You take a crowded minibus taxi all the way into the Johannesburg CBD. You spend hours walking through these massive wholesale warehouses, haggling over bulk clothing.
Exhausting work.
So exhausting. You bundle it all up, haul it back on another taxi, and you set up a stall in the township. You sell those clothes, and after all your expenses, you saved your customers some money and you've made a margin for yourself.
Right.
Let's say you clear 50 rands in profit per item. You feel like a genius? You outsmarted the retail markup.
And we shouldn't dismiss the survival aspect of that, right? On a microeconomic, put food on the table level, that 50 Rand margin is the difference between eating and starving.
Absolutely. It's real money to that person.
But if we pull the camera back and look at the entire supply chain, the reality of that transaction shifts dramatically. While our hustler is, celebrating, squeezing out a small margin on the finished product, what was actually happening at the origin?
Yeah, what's happening at the factory?
Well, the factory in Johannesburg took 10 rands worth of raw, unprocessed cotton, ran it through machines that they own, and turned it into a 150 Rand garment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The massive exponential multiplier of wealth, the real profit, was captured long before the reseller even got out of bed.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on this a little bit, because you're making it sound like the hustler taking the taxi is a sucker. But arbitrage, buying low in one market and selling high in another, is a totally legitimate foundational business model.
It is.
Hedge funds do it all day long with currencies and stocks. We celebrate Wall Street traders for finding price discrepancies. So why is it a trap for the local hustler to do it with clothes, but smart finance for a guy in a suit?
That is a fantastic comparison, but we really have to look at the underlying mechanics of Wall Street arbitrage versus what we can call survival arbitrage.
Okay, break that down for me.
When a hedge fund engages in arbitrage, they are deploying capital at scale to exploit micro inefficiencies in a system, but they aren't expending their own physical labor to do it.
Right, they just click a button.
Exactly. The local hustler is deploying their own sweat, their time, and their physical safety to bridge a geographical gap. They are literally doing the logistics. But more importantly, the hedge fund often has equity, right? They own the algorithm, they own the fund.
They own the infrastructure.
Yes. The hustler owns nothing but the immediate inventory they can physically carry. They are optimizing the absolute smallest, most labor-intensive sliver of the economic pie. I mean, the source material says it best. They are doing delivery, not ownership.
Ah, I see. Okay, it's the difference between owning the toll road and being the guy who drives back and forth paying the toll, just hoping to sell a sandwich on the other side.
Precisely. It highlights the dynamic of price versus control. Price is the number you negotiate at the till. Control is the structural power to dictate that number in the first place.
Mind-blowing.
When you take the taxi to Joburg, you are fighting a war over price. You are fighting for the scraps of margin left at the very end of a long supply chain.
Right, because the big players already took their cut.
Exactly. The factory owner isn't fighting over price. They have control. They dictate the baseline cost. As long as your entirely mental bandwidth is focused on negotiating price, you are perpetually at the mercy of the entity that holds the control.
Man, that is so true. Okay, so if we accept that the real wealth is captured at the origin point of production, what actually happens when the finished product and the money reach the destination?
This is where things get really bleak.
It really does. Because this brings us to a concept in the UFX framework that I find incredibly visual, but also devastating. They call it the macroeconomics of the leaky bucket.
The leaky bucket is probably one of the most accurate visual metaphors for cash flow within an informal or localized economy that I've ever seen.
So the framework paints this picture of payday. Whether it's wages from jobs outside the township or government social grants, there's a specific day of the month where a massive, sudden influx of capital hits the community all at once.
Right, everyone gets paid on the 25th, for example.
Exactly. So the bucket is plunged into the river and pulled out completely full, but it immediately starts draining.
And it doesn't drain through one massive hole. I mean, it drains through a million tiny everyday transactions. Well, the text specifically points to daily consumables. Things like cold drinks, potato chips, mobile airtime. When a resident takes their wages and buys a branded soda, a product manufactured by a multinational conglomerate outside the township, the profit generated by that purchase doesn't circulate locally.
It just leaves.
It immediately gets on a metaphorical truck and travels right back out to the external shareholders.
The money touches the community for a fleeting moment,
Yeah.
just long enough to facilitate consumption before it totally drains away.
Yep.
And it explains a paradox that I think confuses a lot of people when they look at working-class neighborhoods. You drive through these areas on a Saturday after payday, and there is immense, vibrant economic activity.
Oh, it's bustling.
It's packed. The informal markets are packed. Cash is changing hands rapidly. The energy is undeniable. But a decade later, the community itself hasn't accrued any collective wealth. The infrastructure hasn't improved at all.
Because people are confusing velocity with retention.
Velocity with retention. Elaborate on that.
So, in a wealthy industrialized neighborhood, a dollar might circulate 5 or 6 times before it leaves.
Oh, I see.
Right, so the local graphic designer gets paid. They hire the local plumber. The plumber buys groceries at a locally owned grocer. The grocer pays the local accountant. That is the local multiplier effect.
And the money stays in the bucket.
Exactly. But in the leaky bucket scenario, the multiplier effect is essentially zero. The township acts as the last stop, not the source. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is functioning exactly as it was historically designed to function, as a reservoir of labor and a captive consumer market. It is an economy of transit.
It really completely changes how you look at a bank statement. Like, if you are listening right now, I want you to think about your own payday. Where does your first swipe of the debit card go?
It's a scary thought.
It is, because if I look at my own credit card statement right now, I'm basically looking at a map of leaks. Every time I swipe for a subscription service based in another country or buy a coffee from a massive global chain instead of the independent roaster down my street, I am actively participating in the drainage of my own local economic bucket.
And it forces a severe level of accountability. Every transaction is a vote for which economic system you are empowering. Are you voting to build a local capture mechanism, or are you voting to maintain the external supply chain?
But that raises a massive logistical problem, right?
Yeah.
Because the framework points out that the money exists, the people are there, and the needs exist. People are always going to need bread and airtime. So what is the actual mechanism to stop the leak? How do you intercept the water before it drains?
Well, to build a capture mechanism, you have to undergo a radical shift in how you perceive your physical environment.
Okay.
You have to stop looking at the streets, the buildings, and the crowds as just mere scenery and start seeing them as predictable economic currents.
Which takes us out of abstract theory and right into the dirt of spatial economics. And the framework uses 2 incredibly vivid, real South African examples to illustrate this.
Sure.
Let's tackle the taxi rank first.
Perfect example.
For our global listeners who might not have experienced a major South African minibus taxi rank, it is an absolute sensory overload. It is this sprawling, chaotic hub with thousands of commuters, hundreds of minibuses constantly revving, hawkers shouting, loud music.
It's intense.
Very intense. But it's a highly organized, decentralized transit network that moves millions of people a day. The sheer volume of cash physically moving through that space on a Tuesday morning is staggering.
It is a localized economic hurricane.
Yes, exactly. But the framework poses a brilliant puzzle. It asks, with all that immense guaranteed daily cash flow, why does the rank often look like a dusty, underdeveloped lot with a few informal tables and umbrellas? Why isn't there a multi-story, thriving retail and service hub built right on top of it?
And the answer is profound.
Because people see land, they don't see systems.
Exactly. This is where we get into the concept of the decision point or the bottleneck. When you stand in the middle of that taxi rank, your human brain is naturally drawn to the motion and the noise. You look at the drivers navigating the chaos, or the informal traders running alongside the vans selling snacks through the windows.
Right, you see the hustle.
You see the hustle, and you inherently assume that the person expending the most physical energy, the one sweating the most, is the one capturing the most value. But economic systems do not reward sweat. They reward positioning.
The person running the fastest isn't winning the race.
Not if they're running on someone else's track. The most powerful, wealthiest player in the ecosystem of that taxi rank isn't running at all. It is the individual or the association that controls the point where the money is structurally forced to stop.
The bottleneck.
Exactly. It's the entity that owns the physical dirt the rank sits on and charges a fee for every van that enters. Or the person who secured the exclusive commercial rights to supply the diesel fuel to a fleet of 300 vehicles. Or the person who controls the holding area. They aren't shouting, they aren't running. They simply mapped the spatial flow of capital, found the exact coordinate where a transaction is unavoidable, and positioned themselves there. They saw an invisible system of flow, while everyone else just saw a loud, dusty piece of land to stand on.
That completely reframes everything.
Yeah.
Let me challenge this, though. You're talking about owning the land or having exclusive fuel contracts. That requires massive capital and political influence. Most people listening don't have the leverage to take over a central transit hub. Isn't this just replacing one unattainable system with another?
That's a fair critique if we only apply the concept at the macro infrastructure level. But the beauty of the decision point is that it scales down perfectly to the micro level. It's not just about owning the whole rank, it's about owning the micro bottlenecks within it.
Which leads us perfectly to the second spatial example from the text, the spaza queue. Now, a spaza shop is a small, informal convenience store, usually run out of a converted shipping container or a room attached to a house in the township. And the framework makes a very simple observation. The line at the spaza shop never ends. From 6:00 a.m. until late at night, there is a constant, steady stream of customers.
And why does the line never end? Because human biological and social needs do not adhere to a schedule. You will always need bread. The baby will always need milk. You will always need mobile data to send a message. The demand is perpetual.
But let's dig into the mechanics of that line, because they aren't just selling bread, they are providing a very specific service that keeps people coming back.
Yes, they are providing the service of breaking bulk, which is essentially a form of microliquidity.
Microliquidity, what does that mean in practice?
Well, a family might not have the cash flow to go to a massive supermarket in the suburbs and buy a 10-kilogram bag of maize meal, a liter of cooking oil, and a bulk pack of tea. It requires too much upfront capital.
Right, they only had 20 rands for the day.
Exactly. So the spaza shop owner buys that bulk, absorbs the capital costs, and then breaks it down. They sell a cup of maize meal in a small plastic bag. They sell single tea bags. They sell a quarter loaf of bread. They are monetizing the community's lack of liquidity.
That is deeply profound.
Yeah.
The line never ends because it's a liquidity bottleneck.
Exactly.
But the framework forces a harsh self-reflection here. If you are standing in that line, no matter how hard you hustled that day, no matter how much you sweat, in that exact moment, you are the water leaping out of the bucket. You are a consumer.
You're participating in someone else's system.
Right. But if you are the one standing inside the container, passing the single tea bag through the security grate, you have achieved what the text calls the ultimate win: consistent cash flow.
It's the realization that true wealth isn't about the massive one-off windfall. It's not about making $1 million in a day and then starving for a month. It is the steady, unavoidable, unrelenting drip, drip, drip of capital into a system you control.
Let's pull this concept out of the township and apply it to the broader world, because this idea of a decision point is everywhere once you start looking for it.
Oh, absolutely everywhere.
The framework mentions other physical infrastructures like a school gate or a bus stop. A school gate guarantees that hundreds of children, holding small amounts of pocket money, will physically congregate in one exact location twice a day, 5 days a week, 40 weeks a year. It is a highly predictable, recurring system of flow.
And if we look at the digital world, the exact same mechanics apply. I mean, what is the Amazon checkout page? It is a digital bottleneck.
So true.
What is an app store? It is a toll booth positioned at the only entry point to your smartphone. The tech giants didn't just build products, they built digital taxi ranks. They own the infrastructure where the traffic has to flow.
Okay, my brain is firing on all cylinders right now, but I still have this nagging doubt. The UFX text explicitly states, and I quote, "Land is there, skills are there, money is there." It paints this picture that all the raw ingredients for wealth creation are already present in the local economy. So if it's all there, if the money is flowing and the people are perfectly capable of seeing these bottlenecks, what is the actual barrier? Why isn't everyone setting up shop at the decision points?
Because the barrier is not physical. It isn't a lack of bricks or a lack of inventory. The barrier is entirely perceptual.
Or Zepschel?
Yes, it is incredibly difficult to see the water when you are the fish swimming in it.
Okay, explain that.
Well, when you are a commuter at the taxi rank, you are experiencing that space subjectively. You are annoyed by the noise, you are worried about your safety, you are stressed about being late for work, and you are hyper-focused on finding an empty seat in a specific minibus.
Right, you just want to get home.
Exactly. Your brain filters out everything that doesn't serve that immediate goal. You cannot see the macroeconomic system because you are trapped inside the micro-experience of survival. To become an owner, you have to psychologically step outside of your own body, hover above the space, and view it objectively as a network of transactions.
Which means the real revolution isn't economic, it's cognitive. We are talking about a fundamental reprogramming of the human brain. If the barrier is perceptual, then the solution requires a massive psychological shift.
Precisely.
We have to transition from analyzing the physical geography of the streets to dissecting the mental geography of the listener. We have to pit the cheap mindset against the owner mindset.
And this is where the theory actually hits the pavement, because we can sit here and intellectually dissect spatial economics for hours, but if you do not change your internal operating system, your external behavior will remain exactly the same.
You will still hunt for the discount code.
Exactly.
So let's break down these two mindsets. The consumer mindset, the one we open the show with, the one chasing the dopamine high of a bargain, always operates from a single guiding question. How can I get this for less?
And the consequence of that question is that all of your cognitive energy, all of your creativity, and all of your time goes into optimizing one single variable price.
But the owner mindset looks at the exact same scenario, the exact same community, and asks a totally different question. How can I create what people need?
This raises an important question, though, about why the framework labels the consumer mindset as a trap. It doesn't just call it inefficient, it calls it dangerous.
Why is it dangerous to want a good deal? I
Uh-huh.
assume because it's a distraction.
It's worse than a distraction. It's active complicity. When you are constantly hunting for cheap deals, when you obsess over how to extract the maximum amount of product for the minimum amount of money, you are dedicating your precious time and energy to strengthening someone else's logistics network.
Oh, man.
You are helping them clear their inventory. You are optimizing their delivery mechanism. And while you are busy being the smartest shopper in the room, you are entirely neglecting to build your own system of capture.
That's terrifying.
The trap is that by focusing so intensely on being an expert consumer, you guarantee that you will remain a customer forever. You are essentially polishing the bars of your own cage.
Wow. So you save $50 today, but you forfeit the cognitive bandwidth required to build a machine that generates $50 every hour. You are trading systemic power for a momentary discount.
Precisely. One mindset reacts to the environment, the other shapes it.
I want to bring this right down to a practical, actionable level for the listener right now, because the UFX framework concludes with a series of discussion questions meant to act as a personal audit.
These are great.
I want to walk through these right now, and I'll even put myself on the chopping block to show how this works. The first prompt is, where do you spend money daily? And could any of those items be produced locally instead of brought in from outside?
And answering that requires a level of radical honesty that most people avoid.
It really does. If I look at my own life, my absolute non-negotiable daily spend is coffee. I buy a coffee every single morning from a massive franchise near my studio. The beans are imported, the roasting is done in some mega facility in another state, the cups are shipped in from overseas, and the profits go to a corporate headquarters on the other side of the country.
That is a massive leak in your local
A
budget.
huge leak. So applying the owner mindset, the question isn't, how do I find a cheaper coffee? The question is, how do I intercept that flow of capital?
Exactly.
Like, could I buy a small roaster and source beans directly? Could I set up a high-quality cart right outside the studio building where 50 other people are also walking in every morning? It forces you to look at your own consumption not as a personal failing, but as a treasure map.
I love that. A treasure map.
Yeah. Where you spend consistently is exactly where the demand is proven and exactly where an owner should be building.
So let's look at the second prompt. Identify a decision point in your area, a taxi rank, a school gate, a bus stop. What could you sell there that people always need?
Okay, for me, it's the train station I commute through. Thousands of people bottlenecking at the turnstiles every evening. And what do they need? In winter, they are freezing, waiting for delayed trains. They need warmth. They need a distraction. Maybe they need a quick, hot handheld food item that doesn't require sitting down.
And notice how you're analyzing the environment there. You aren't saying, I want to sell vintage t-shirts because I like vintage t-shirts.
Ain't nobody cares what I like.
Exactly. You are analyzing the structural needs of the bottleneck. It's not about what you desire to push into the market. It's about what the system dictates is required at that specific coordinate. You are diagnosing a friction point and providing the lubricant.
The ultimate advice here, the rallying cry from the UFX framework, is a phrase that I think I'm going to write on a Post-it note and stick to my monitor. Stop waiting for trucks. Become the one who creates value.
It is the essence of the psychological shift. Stop waiting for external systems to deliver cheap, finished goods so you can consume them. Step out of the line at the spaza shop, step back from the chaos of the taxi rank, look at the logistics of how the truck got there in the first place, and figure out how to build the factory yourself, whether that factory is literal or metaphorical.
This has been a heavy, mind-bending exploration. So what does this all mean? Let's pull everything together and synthesize the core, unshakable takeaways from this lesson on the township economy and systemic control.
I think we can distill this down to a few critical axioms. First, the illusion of cheap. Do not dedicate your life to chasing cheap prices. It feels like a victory in the short term, but it structurally guarantees you remain a passive participant in a game you do not control.
Second, the imperative of control. You have to transition from optimizing delivery to establishing ownership. Whether we are talking about the supply chain of imported clothes or the physical layout of a transit hub, you must look for the control points, not just the entry points.
Third, and this is the lifeblood of any sustainable enterprise, the supremacy of consistent cash flow. Do not chase the erratic, massive windfall. Find where the money is structurally forced to stop on a daily basis and build your foundation at that exact coordinate. A steady, unavoidable drip will always outperform a volatile splash.
And finally, the perceptual shift. You have to train your eyes to see the system, not just the land. Opportunity is rarely about empty physical space. It is almost entirely about mapping the invisible flow of human behavior and capital through that space.
The transition from a consumer to an owner does not require an immediate influx of millions of dollars. It requires a complete rewiring of what you do with the resources, the geography, and the daily friction points you already interact with.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with. Building on an exercise from the text. It asks you to think of a time you used the consumer mindset and rewrite it using the owner mindset. I want you to do that right now with the very activity you are engaged in.
Oh, this is good.
Take a look at whatever device you are using to listen to this deep dive right now. Whether it's a smartphone in your pocket or a laptop on your desk, you almost certainly purchased it with a consumer mindset. You bought it to consume content, to listen to audio, to watch videos, to scroll through social media. You bought it to be a recipient.
A consumer.
Exactly. But I want you to look at that piece of glass and metal and ask yourself, how could I use this exact same device tomorrow to capture cash flow and build a system? How could this tool, which currently acts as a massive drain on my personal leaky bucket, be inverted to become a system of capture that I control?
That changes everything.
It does. The next time you find yourself standing in a line, whether it's at a spaza shop, a taxi rank, or even just scrolling endlessly online, I want you to stop the autopilot. Ask yourself one simple, radical question. Who owns the spot I'm standing on right now, and how can I build my own? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.